Britain had always been a land shrouded in mist and myth, a place that Rome regarded as a distant edge of the world, where painted warriors worshipped strange gods and fought with iron wills. For nearly a century, the emperors in Rome had dreamed of conquering this island. Julius Caesar himself crossed the channel and battled the tribes, but he never stayed long enough to claim the land for Rome. The island remained untamed. The dream remained unfinished. Everything changed in the year of 43 after the birth of Christ. Emperor Claudius, determined to prove his legitimacy and power, launched a massive invasion. This time there would be no raid. This would be a conquest. Rome would not withdraw again. At the head of the expedition stood Aulus Plautius, a veteran commander with patience and intellect sharpened by years of service. His army numbered around 40,000 soldiers, including legionaries, auxiliaries, cavalry, and engineers. They boarded their vessels on the coast of Gaul and cast their fate to the sea. In their minds lay one objective: bring the eagle standards of Rome into the heart of Britain and never look back. The Britons were not caught unprepared. They had watched the preparations with a mixture of fear and fury. To them, the Romans were invaders without divine right, who sought to chain free people beneath a foreign order. Caradicus, a prince of the Catuvalauni tribe, rose to lead the resistance. His brother Togodumnus joined him. They united warriors from across the land and prepared to defend the island with everything they had. They would fight on terrain that had raised them since birth. Forests, rivers, and marshes would become their greatest allies. When the Romans landed, the first clashes were furious, but brief. The Britons tested them, found that they would not frighten easily, and withdrew deeper inland. The Romans pushed forward, securing a foothold. However, the resistance refused to break. Caradicus understood that head-on battles favored the disciplined Roman legions. He needed a place where Roman formation fighting would be challenged. He needed the river Medway. This river was more than a barrier of water. It was a place of soft banks, hidden depths, and treacherous channels. It was surrounded by marshland that swallowed heavy boots and slow-moving lines. For warriors who had grown up crossing bogs and woods, it was a natural fortress. Caradicus positioned his forces on the far side of the river. Their chariots raced along the banks. Slingers and spear throwers waited for the enemy to attempt a crossing. The Romans studied the scene and understood that this was no simple obstacle. The river had been turned into a weapon. Commander Plautius realized that brute force would not win the day. The Roman legions were unmatched on open ground, but here they were confronted by an environment that stripped away their advantages. A direct crossing meant slaughter. A retreat meant humiliation. Rome did not retreat. Then Plautius unveiled the secret that would turn the battle. The secret weapon was not a machine of wood and iron. It was a corps of soldiers that few in Britain had ever heard of. They were the Batavians. These auxiliaries came from the wetlands of what is now the Netherlands. From childhood, they had learned to swim rivers while wearing armor and carrying weapons. They could fight in water as well as on land. As daylight faded, the towering legionaries stood ready but silent. Plautius gave the order. The Batavians slipped into the cold river like shadows. They made no noise. Britain's scouts watched the main Roman lines and did not notice the silent advance gliding beneath the surface. The Batavians emerged on the enemy's side in a sudden burst of violence. They charged upward through the reeds and struck at the defenders from behind. Confusion exploded through the Briton ranks. Caradicus quickly rallied his warriors, but the river had already been breached. Roman engineers had begun constructing makeshift crossings further along the banks. Soon legionaries were moving toward the fight, shields raised and swords drawn. The Britons launched their chariots, the thunder of hooves shaking the earth. Their warriors hurled spears with primal rage, trying to throw the Romans back into the water. The clash became a storm of iron and muscle. Roman discipline met Celtic ferocity. Every inch of ground was paid for with blood. The Batavians held their foothold tenaciously. They formed a living bridgehead, allowing more soldiers to enter the fray. Romans advanced in tight formations, shields locked, each step forcing the Britons further from the riverbank that had been their greatest strength. The Britons were not defeated yet. ERADICATED ordered a counterattack that nearly broke the Roman line. For a moment, the legions were pushed backward. A cohort standard wavered. If the line shattered, the Romans would be trapped between river and enemy. Plautius sensed the danger and sent in his reserves. Fresh legionaries crashed into the battle like a hammer. The line held and pushed forward again. As night fell, the battlefield was lit by the fires of war. The screams of wounded men echoed across the water. The Britons retreated toward the upper ground, refusing to give up even as exhaustion crept into their limbs. They had fought valiantly, but the Roman secret weapon had done its work. The defenses of the river Medway had been overrun. Britain was no longer shielded by water and marsh. The door to the heart of the island stood open. Plautius allowed his troops a night to recover. He knew the next day would be decisive. The Britons would not leave the field entirely. They had pride, and they believed the gods favored their cause. They would either drive the Romans back into the sea or die as warriors defending their homeland. The second day at the river, Medway began with cold mist crawling over the reeds. The Britons returned before dawn, determined to reclaim what they had lost. ERADICATED launched a sudden assault, hoping to throw the Romans back into the water before they fully assembled. His warriors yelled battle cries that echoed across the field and crashed into the Roman front like a wave. The legionaries tightened their shields and braced themselves. The earth trembled. Spears clattered against iron. The clash began anew. Plautius expected such fury. Rome respected courage even in enemies and planned for the worst of it. The Roman cavalry swept around the flanks, charging into the sides of the Briton lines. Hooves roared across the marsh edge. ERADICATED countered by unleashing his chariots again. Lightly armored warriors leapt from the platforms, threw their weapons, then jumped back aboard before the Romans could respond. They moved with astonishing speed. For a moment, the Roman cavalry staggered beneath the assault. The Britons fought as though every heartbeat might be their last. Their defiance astonished even the hardened veterans of Plautius. The Romans realized they were facing a people who would rather collapse in the mud than bow to a foreign empire. The Batavians once again swam through the shallows to strike where least expected. Roman slingers hurled lead stones into distant ranks. Legionaries advanced step by step, pushing with shields as if trying to move a wall. British blades hacked, scratched, and scraped against Roman armor. Britain shields splintered against the unforgiving discipline of the legions. The ground turned slick and red beneath thousands of feet. For hours, the battle raged. ERADICATED rallied his warriors continuously, his voice rising above the chaos. He understood that this river was the key to Britain. If the Romans gained full passage, the heartlands could no longer hide behind nature. The Britons had to hold their position or lose everything. Yet even courage has limits. As midday approached, exhaustion dragged at the arms of Britain's defenders. The Roman line refused to break. Every time the Britons pushed, Rome pushed harder. The legions moved with a precision that defied fear. Their standards gleamed in the sunlight, symbols of a power that had conquered countless nations before this one. Rome was an idea as much as an army. an idea that no force could resist forever. When Caradicus attempted one final charge, the Romans counterattacked with perfect timing. The Batavians surged forward from the flanks. The Roman cavalry struck the rear. The wall of shields advanced. The Briton lines began to bend under the crushing weight. Men slipped in the mud. Leaders fell where they stood. It was no longer a battle of strategy, but a brutal struggle for survival. The Britons realized they could not win the position. Caradicus ordered a withdrawal to preserve what remained of his army. Better to live and fight again than perish entirely at the river. His warriors retreated uphill toward the dense forests that covered Britain like armor. Those woods would become their new fortress. The Romans did not pursue immediately. They held the field, secured the banks, and claimed victory. The river Medway, once a proud shield of the island, now belonged to Rome. The significance was not lost on anyone. The conquest of Britain had officially begun. Claudius did not stop. He pushed further inland, aware that hesitation allowed resistance to reform. Yet within 2 days, the Britons turned to fight once more at the River Thames. There they believed the gods themselves would aid them. The Thames had quicksand banks and hidden mud pits capable of swallowing men whole. Caradicus and Togodumnus positioned their forces well, trusting the river's wrath to finish what their swords could not. The Romans advanced carefully. Even then, men sank and vanished without a scream. The Britons cheered every casualty. However, the Batavians once again defied the landscape. They waded into the deep currents and found safe paths through the mud that no Briton had thought possible. When they emerged on the enemy side, prepared knives in hand, the Britons understood that even their rivers could betray them. Desperation drove them into a wild defense. Togodumnus, fighting at the front, was struck down. Some accounts say he died on the field. Others believe he was carried away to perish later. His loss pierced the spirit of the tribes. Caradicus, furious and grieving, ordered a final retreat into the woods of Wales. From there, he would wage a resistance that lasted years, a symbol of indomitable defiance. Rome admired him even as they hunted him. Meanwhile, Claudius reported his victories to Emperor Claudius. The emperor saw a chance to gain glory in person. He sailed across the channel with reinforcements, including elephants that terrified those who saw them. When he arrived, the remaining tribes, shocked by the relentless advance and awestruck by beasts they believed only existed in legend, surrendered or negotiated peace. The fortified settlement of Camulodunum, capital of the Catuvelauni, fell to Rome without further bloodshed. Britain became a province of the empire. Rome celebrated triumph. Claudius paraded with Caradicus as one of his greatest trophies after the warrior was captured years later. The Senate praised the emperor as a conquistador of new lands. Poets wrote verses about the final defeat of the Painted Islanders. Statues commemorated the subjugation of the misty land beyond the sea. Yet Rome knew the truth. Without the Batavians, victory at the River Medway was uncertain. Without their ability to turn water into a battlefield, the legions might have remained on the wrong side of the river, easy prey for chariots and spear volleys. The Roman secret weapon was not only strength or strategy, it was adaptability. Rome learned the nature of its enemies and turned that knowledge into power. The conquest of Britain was not a single event. It was a campaign that would see rebellions, betrayals, and fierce queens like Boudica rise from the ashes of defeat. Nevertheless, the River Medway was the moment where Rome proved that nature itself could not protect Britain from imperial ambition. The river that once guarded the tribes became a symbol of Rome's unstoppable advance. Claudius knew the campaign was far from done. The forests ahead were dark and untamed. The people were not broken, only wounded. Rome would have to earn its control of this place inch by inch. Yet with every fortress built and every road paved, Britain would transform from a land of legend into another jewel set in the imperial crown. The war had changed. The rivers of Britain no longer belonged to the island. Rome turned them into pathways of conquest. The conquest of Britain advanced like a slow-moving storm. Rome pressed forward with caution because a land of hills, swamps, and forests could hide entire armies within its depths. The Britons understood this terrain intimately, and they used it to wage a relentless guerrilla war. Every Roman camp faced the constant threat of night raids. Every supply line risked ambush. The legions had triumphed at Medway and the Thames, but Britain still refused to kneel. Caradicus retreated westward with those loyal to him. There he rallied tribes that still burned with the desire to resist. He became a symbol of hope, a warrior who refused to believe that Rome's victory at the rivers had sealed the fate of his homeland. He believed that the land itself fought with the Britons. Ancient gods watched from the mountains, spirits guarded the valleys. The fight for freedom must continue. Rome knew Caradicus was a threat. His very existence encouraged rebellion. Plautius strengthened defenses along the newly conquered territory, building roads and fortresses that spread Roman influence deeper into the island. Legions marched methodically, forcing submission through intimidation and diplomacy. Some tribes chose peace rather than destruction. Others believed resistance was a duty before the gods. Meanwhile, the Batavians remained close to the front. Thousands of Roman soldiers began training under their methods to better handle rivers and marshes. Rome understood that a single innovation could shift the balance of a campaign. The Batavians had proven that even an empire of roads and legions must learn to swim when the battlefield demands it. Years passed, and Caradicus continued to strike from the highlands. He harassed Roman forces, disappearing into the fog as quickly as he appeared. His warriors attacked isolated patrols and disappeared into the night. They ambushed caravans transporting food and weapons to frontier forts. Though Caradicus rarely won large battles, he prevented Rome from enjoying peace. The empire began pouring more resources into Britain to finish the task that Medway had set in motion. Eventually, the leadership in Rome changed. Plautius returned home to honor and applause. The emperor appointed a new governor named Publius Ostorius Scapula. He did not share Plautius' patience. Scapula believed that defiance must be crushed without mercy. His campaign focused directly on ending Caratacus' influence. The Briton hero found new allies among the Ordovices and Silures in what is now Wales. Their lands of rugged mountains and tangled woods offered natural protection. Rome had to carve each step through stone and thicket. Scapula launched a brutal offensive. Forts were built deeper into enemy territory. Forests were cut down to deny cover. Roads sliced through the land like scars. Rome reshaped nature itself to tighten its grip on Britain. Caradicus answered with daring strikes that mocked Roman discipline. He used deception, ambush, and knowledge of every ridge and river bend. His defiance lengthened the war significantly. Still, the inevitable approached. Scapula gathered a massive force and marched directly toward Caradicus' stronghold. The Briton leader chose a battlefield of his own design. It was a steep hill flanked by rough ground and protected in front by a river. Wooden barricades stretched across the slope, creating a fortified terrace. It resembled Medway in reverse. Caradicus intended to make Rome pay a terrible price for each step. Scapula studied the challenge. His soldiers had faced this type of defiance before. They moved in, shields raised against a storm of stones and javelins. Britons shouted from the heights as missiles rained down on the advancing legions. Yet Rome did not panic. Soldiers broke through the barricades, scaling the uneven ground despite the hail of attacks. The Briton front line clashed with Roman swords in fierce combat. But discipline once again triumphed over passion. Caradicus' line faltered. His warriors fought to the last, but the Romans surged upward with unstoppable precision. Caradicus escaped into the wilderness. His family fled with him, seeking refuge among the powerful Queen Cartimandua of the Brigantes. Yet the queen understood where the power now lay. She captured Caradicus and handed him to Rome. Her decision shocked many, but it preserved her own tribe and secured Roman favor. Rome finally held the man who had defied them longer than any other leader in Britain. They sent Caradicus to the heart of the empire. The streets of the capital filled with citizens eager to see the wild king from the misty island that Rome had conquered. Instead of begging for mercy, he spoke with quiet strength before Emperor Claudius and the Senate. He asked how it was that someone with nothing now stood in the great city, and why a man who once had freedom should be judged for fighting to keep it. His courage impressed the emperor. Claudius spared his life, granting him and his family the right to live in Rome. Though Caradicus' resistance ended, the war for Britain continued. The tribes of the north and west still saw the legions as invaders. The Romans pushed slowly into their lands, relying on everything they had learned since the river Medway. They used the Batavian swimmers and pontoon builders to cross rivers that once stopped armies. They created supply routes that allowed them to maintain pressure without pause. Rome turned the rivers from barriers into roads. The advantage once held by the Britons was gone forever. The engineering genius of Rome reshaped Britain. Bridges spanned waters that once guarded tribal boundaries. Fortified camps dotted the banks. The empire turned the natural defenses of Britain into the bones of its own power structure. The Roman secret weapon was mobility. Every obstacle transformed into a new avenue for domination. The rivers that defined the land were now bound to Roman will. Years later, Britannia stood firmly within the empire. Cities grew where forests once stood. Latin words mixed with Celtic tongues. Legionaries patrolled borders deep into the north. The eagle standard of Rome flew proudly over lands that Julius Caesar once glimpsed but never held. The victory at the river Medway had made it all possible. Without that crossing, Rome might have remained a visitor on British shores rather than a conqueror. The Britons remembered the battle for generations. They passed down stories of the day when foreign soldiers walked through water as though guided by the spirits of the deep. They spoke of how chariots and swords could not hold back the march of machines. Men and discipline forged under Roman command. The river that once separated the tribes from their enemies became the turning point that ushered the empire into their homes. Rome celebrated the triumph as proof that nothing could withstand its ambition. The invasion of Britain had not been a victory of numbers, but a victory of adaptation. The Batavians' ability to fight in water changed everything. Battles that should have been impossible were won because Rome understood that the art of war constantly evolves. The greatest empire of the ancient world expanded not only through power, but through learning. The conquest of Britain was a story of rivers conquered and boundaries rewritten. The Medway stood at the center of that transformation. It had turned from a shield into a doorway, from a line that defined freedom to a path that led Rome into the heart of a nation that believed itself protected by the very shape of its land. Time passed, and the legions became a familiar presence throughout southern Britain. Roads connected forts like veins of stone and gravel. Trade flowed along routes once guarded by ancient tribes. Roman rule reshaped culture and faith. Bathhouses rose above hot springs, once believed sacred. Amphitheaters echoed with cheers where groves had held silent prayers beneath the moon. Britain was no longer a distant mystery. It was a managed province of the empire. Yet even as Rome celebrated its mastery, memories of the Medway remained powerful. Veterans who had fought through the muddy waters never forgot how close they had come to defeat. Officers told new recruits that every conquest demanded more than muscle. Victory required minds that could transform challenges into advantages. Rome continued to evolve because old methods could not win new wars. The Batavians earned deep respect in the empire. Their skill in rivers became legendary. They served in campaigns far beyond Britain and paved the way for countless victories. Their presence in the legions reinforced a truth that Claudius and his successors understood well. An empire thrives not by forcing everyone to become exactly like its core, but by drawing unique strengths from every people it commands. In times of peace, the Batavians trained new cohorts to swim in armor. In times of conflict, they proved that rivers no longer belonged to enemies alone. The Britons who accepted peace gradually found a place in the new order. Some served in Roman armies, others traded with Roman merchants. Tribal leaders who once fought Rome became local rulers under imperial authority, responsible for maintaining order and paying taxes. A new Britain emerged, layered with both Celtic tradition and Roman influence. Children grew up speaking Latin phrases and worshiping gods imported from far across the sea. Nevertheless, not all accepted this transformation willingly. At times, fires of rebellion ignited again. The most famous uprising occurred under the fiery leadership of Queen Boudica. Her revolt nearly drove Rome into the sea. It proved that Roman power required constant vigilance. Yet even Boudica could not undo what Medway had begun. The rivers continued to carry Roman forces deeper into the land. The bridgeheads, forts, and roads built after Claudius' victory ensured that the empire could regroup, counterattack, and ultimately overwhelm resistance. Centuries later, the Roman presence reached its farthest limit in northern Britain, marked by the construction of Hadrian's Wall. Beyond it lay lands the empire deemed too costly to hold. The wall represented an edge and a statement. Rome now decided which borders mattered. Britain had become an essential part of imperial strategy, wealth, and identity. As decades turned into centuries, Rome changed. Emperors rose and fell. Civil wars fractured stability. Yet the memory of Britain as a place once resistant to the very idea of conquest remained a reminder of imperial strength. All of this traced back to a moment when Roman soldiers stepped into the waters of the Medway and refused to be turned away. Historians often point to great inventions as turning points in conflicts. Some battles are remembered for siege engines or for superior cavalry. The Battle of Medway is remembered for a weapon made not of wood or iron, but of human capability. The Batavians turned rivers from defenses into opportunities. They taught the Romans to think beyond the earth beneath their sandals and see water as a field where discipline could still triumph. In the centuries after the conquest, scholars debated how Rome won Britain. Some praised the tactics of Claudius. Others credited Claudius for his leadership and symbolism. Many pointed to the unbreakable spirit of the legions. Yet the truth remained clear to anyone who studied the details. Without the Batavians and their mastery of river fighting, Medway might have been a disaster. Britain might have remained free. The conquest that shaped the island's future would have died in the reeds. The Battle of Medway did not simply decide a military campaign. It decided the cultural destiny of an island. It brought roads, architecture, and government that influenced societies long after the legions departed. Even in modern times, fragments of that influence remain in language, law, and infrastructure. The ghosts of Roman ambition still walk upon the land once protected by a river that believed itself invincible. Caradicus continued to be honored in stories long after his defeat. He embodied the spirit of a people who never willingly surrendered their identity. His capture did not end Britain's soul. It only changed the form that resistance would take. Britons would adapt as the Romans did, finding new ways to assert themselves and preserve their heritage beneath the weight of empire. No conquest remains forever. Eventually, the Romans withdrew from Britain as the empire strained to defend its crumbling borders closer to home. When they left, the roads, walls, and memories of Medway remained. The island returned to self-rule, but it was forever altered. Had Medway unfolded differently, Britain might have developed without Roman influence. The shape of history itself would be unrecognizable. The rivers of Britain continued flowing long after Roman banners ceased to fly over them. They remained symbols of nature's power, yet the legacy of Medway ensured they also symbolized the ingenuity that empires must wield to survive. The lesson of the battle outlived every soldier who fought there. Innovation guided victory. Adaptation sustained dominion. The greatest armies were those willing to learn from the world they hoped to conquer. The Roman secret weapon that eradicated an empire of river strongholds and tribal boundaries was not a machine. It was a people trained to defy the limits of terrain. The Batavians proved that the environment itself could be conquered with skill and determination. Through them, Rome defeated a land that believed its waters would never yield. Today, the river Medway flows peacefully, unaware of the history that swirls beneath its surface. Yet scholars and storytellers continue to trace the ripples of that long-forgotten struggle. A moment when wooden bridges of flesh and bone gave Rome the foothold it needed to reshape a nation. A moment when the future of Britain shifted forever. If this story about the Battle of Medway and the Roman conquest of Britain has given you new insight into how empires rise and fall, subscribe and join us for more journeys through the hidden battles that shaped the ancient world. Leave a comment and tell us what you think. Was the true Roman secret weapon courage, discipline, or the willingness to learn what others never tried? Like this video, share it with fellow history lovers, and stay with us as we continue to explore the past that still influences us today.